As an emerging entrepreneur and a founder, it's extremely important to set foundations right before you set up or scale your business. Hi, I'm Ankita. Welcome to Zach's Hard to Biz podcast.
And I am Zareen, and today we're going to take you through Zach's signature 8-step Hard to Biz framework. And as a new business owner who's looking at setting up business to scale, this becomes very important and makes life so much easier because we give you a step-by-step approach to take you from all the important segments of making your business functional and ready to thrive.
So, step one is goal setting. And in this segment, we combine personal and business goals and first find out what are your goals. We do this with a very detailed exercise, which is a visualization exercise where we take them through personal and their business goals.
I think the personal goals become so important, right? Because for us also, when we map our personal goals to our professional goals and our business goals, the way we attack the same goal becomes so much more different. And I've said this so many times, and I'm going to say it again, but you are your business, right? So when we have clarity in terms of where is that you want to go as a human being over the course of the next 15, 20 years, and then when you pull that down and take your what's important to you into your business.
Absolutely. But what I feel is someone who's that accomplished, for them it's easier. But when you're starting off new, first step is to know what do you like and what do you want to do in life. And once you know that part, right? So what is your soul's goal?
Right.
And combining that, so if you're fond of art, if you're fond of your family time, how do you match those aspects of your personality, your values, and taking those and combining that with your business values and business goals, and that combination that arises with the work that we do together helps you to one know why you're doing this for the first place. And it is not a journey that you're going to reach there in 10 years. It is about finding out what you're going to do 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, and 10 years down the line, and then also coming back and saying what are you going to do today to get there.
Yeah, like even for my case, I remember so clearly that when the why for me to start Zach was about because I'd had a bad startup experience way back, like over a decade ago, right? So for me, it became like my personal goal was to be able to help other business people not go through that loss that I remember I suffered in my first business venture, be it emotional loss or monetary loss, and even the time that was spent, right, of my life. I felt it was such an important time of my life, but of course I learned a lot. But I think, can you reduce this journey of learning? And I felt the need that if I had a mentor at that time who would have given me the direction that I could have taken to be able to charter this entrepreneurial journey with ease, and point me in the right direction, I would have benefited a lot. So for me, my personal goal was to be able to mitigate business failure. And when I thought about how is it that that can be transformed into a business goal, it became about creating a coaching and consulting company that worked with startups that would help them to be able to go through this journey with as much support that I did not get.
True. What also happens with most of the people are they're like, oh, we want to start a business and we want to reach somewhere, but knowing it in all aspects, right? Where do you want to reach with it financially? Who do you want to serve? And just diving into the next segment, which is who's the next person you're going to serve with your business. That's identifying your ideal buyer personas. And that segment, which is step two, is so profound in its own sense that we do it in such depth that identifying who's going to pay for the products or services that you're building. And it includes things like the demographics, the psychographics, the behavior analysis of that individual. So if you remember, while we were doing this for a jewelry brand, and she was servicing like some 8 to 10 different kinds of customers, who is she going to be serving at the first leg? So there was this this auntie that came out for her that who's going to be who's going to just buy things from her in a snap.
Right. So when you break down the buyer persona, like you rightly said, you break down first, you start off with the demographics, but then you go deeper and deeper and find out how is it that your ideal customer is spending that day, and how are the different ways that you as a brand, product or service, irrespective, can service that customer. And it really gives you a lot of insights to identify what is the pain point that somebody is going to pay maximum money to solve.
Absolutely. And just taking that further, she also was able to find out the collaborations, affiliations that she could do. Where is the other source of income that she can build on? So
Right.
it's B2B, B2C. Similarly, for the travel business, we had direct and indirect competition.
Which is the third step that we look into, which is the competition analysis. And we can't stress enough how much you can learn from competition. I personally am very excited whenever there are other competitors, because one, they help you increase or educate the clientele about about how to use your product or service. And more than that, it gives you so many tips of what can be done right and what is being done wrong. You want to explain a little more about our competition analysis
So before
process?
we dive into the competition, I want to talk about a concept about blue ocean strategy and red ocean strategy here. So in a crowded market, or any players that we see while you're evaluating a business, whether it's travel or whether it's gifting, everybody is doing similar stuff. So that's red ocean. And there's bloodbath. When you move to a blue ocean is when you evaluate your competition with the lens of seeing where is the gap in the market and what can you solve for your customers, or solve for a problem which can really help consumers out there. That becomes a blue ocean strategy.
And the blue ocean strategy becomes even more effective when you go at it from a position of your own strength. And that's where the whole concept of understanding your USP or your unique selling proposition comes in. And with that unique selling proposition, when you look at the market saying, this is what I'm great at, now let me see what competition is doing. Can I do something better? Or is there something that they're totally not doing? Then can I fit my strength into that specific thing, and how can I be better?
And a study would not only help you with just evaluating the features of your products and services, but also evaluate what is the kind of branding that's out there. Where have they raised funds from? Are they bootstrapped? Or are they have do they have another external support? What are the kind of collaborations that are possible in the market?
And that opens your mind up to the next stage, which is creating your perfect business model, right? So once you've understood what is exactly that you want to do, we then help you create a business plan. And we also have a short one-pager business plan concept called the lean canvas that we go into. And then we also help you with partnering with another financial firm that helps us do a very detailed deep dive exercise that also can help you do your valuation, even help you in further fundraising in the future. So that financial process that gives you a very clear business plan, as well as gives you a roadmap financially, allowing you to understand what are your revenue requirements. I mean, what is it that in terms of revenue, what are the cost heads that you're going to accrue? How is it that you can focus on having good profits and creating good margins? Allows you to take that knowledge into creating your product and assortment, right? Which is the next stage.
But before we go there, this is the best time to create startups. There's so much support from government. There's so much VC funding. There's so much funding that government grants are there. So using that also opens your eyes and opens your channels for a lot of income to support you to grow that business.
Right. And when you have clarity of what it is that you're doing, what are the resources that you require, who is the audience that you're going to serve, when you go to any VC or anybody else to raise funds, even if it's a bank loan, they are surprised by the kind of planning that you've done for it, right? Moving on, we also work on your product and assortment, because that makes all the difference in terms of how is it that you plan your range. Take any category. Take the example of Archana, who runs an embroidery store, right, where she creates very specific embroidery of cushions and keepsakes and beautiful things with her hands. even there, an assortment planning becomes so important, because say you need to know what is that customers are looking for when they come to you. So if you're thinking about, are you looking at cushion covers, are you looking at bed covers, are you looking at small handouts, when you are able to break it down in terms of, in this category, these are the 5 categories that I'm going to play in, these are the subcategories. So for example, if you're looking at home decor for her, in home decor I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z. And within that, what are the price points that I need to play at? When you break it down to that level, it helps you build your assortment to such a scale that you're also able to focus on what to sell most.
So what you're also saying is that assortment planning is also important to identify what's your mix of business.
Yes, totally. From a category perspective.
Correct. And we've also seen so many people don't even know what are their categories, subcategories, and that also reflects on your websites and your other places. So knowing your categories and knowing the products and services that you're going to offer to the SKU level is so important.
Yeah, it helps you build your catalog, right? And then how you list it on a marketplace or on your own website or in a store is all a function of the assortment planning and the inventory planning that you do. So a detailed exercise there gives you that confidence in terms of how your entire storefront, if you're talking about a retail kind of a setup, even in education, right? When we were working with Ankit Sailab, for him to be able to break down all the offerings that he had, for in terms of, is it something that he's doing in one-on-one classes, what is it that he will take to schools, what is it that he would take to events, how would he structure those conversations with all the key stakeholders, what are the price points that he would play at. So this not only works at a product planning, it also works from a services planning.
So it also then extends into your website, right? So what you normally talk about is the PDP and the PLP level of your pages, and that really helps people planning that part also.
But yeah, basically what it means, that assortment planning helps you structure your business better, understand how to plan inventory, how to have a sales target being given to each product, so that even your teams are able to focus on selling it better, right? They know which is the category that they need to push. It allows you to also plan for seasonality in business. So there are just multiple ways in which this becomes very effective.
So once this is done, the next step is about process planning, which is about understanding your operations in detail. So for which we always talk about different departments. The CEO might wear all the hats now. As a young entrepreneur, CEO is wearing the marketing hat, the HR hat, the accounting hat. But how do you define each role and each department? That process planning is so critical.
And I tie in process planning to the customer journey. At the end of the day, everything starts and ends with the customer, right? So when you think about what is the customer, how is he or she experiencing your product, right? From every touch point, उसने पहले कहाँ पे वो brand देखा? Did they see it on social media? Did they actually encounter it at a store? Did somebody tell them about it? And then taking that customer through, where did they actually witness the product, when did they touch and feel the product, where did they read about the product, when they went to buy the product in the store, did they see it over there, right? So that comes into planning. Who was the person who was selling the product to them? So you kind of break it down from the customer journey. When was the order created? When was the product dispatched from your warehouse to them? Right, so you break it down into all the functions of business, which is basically, like you rightly said, the front end, your operations, your HR, then how does that flow into how the finance is going to deal with it, and then the core business functions as well, also your marketing team.
So operations करने के बाद, what is the next step? What should the person look at?
So once the operations, like we said, chunking down big tasks into smaller tasks, our next stage is when you're ready to scale. And to scale, you definitely require to have a strong marketing message. And then we take people through the process of creating your magnetic power statement.
Magnetic power statement, and very well known as an elevator pitch, is also a deep process that we do. How do you reach that strong statement that defines you and your business and why you're doing it and who are you serving.
Yeah, and by the time you've reached this step, which is step number 7, you spent so much time discussing this, ideating, brainstorming, breaking it down, that you know exactly what it is that you want to pitch and what is the most important and essential part of your business, which you know is going to help you beat the clutter and stand out. And that's how the elevator pitch, I keep saying that keep it simple, right? The elevator pitch is your 30 seconds way of getting your message across and connecting with the audience.
Absolutely. And this pitch then further translates into a branding book, which is another core piece of work that we do. Normally, what you would see businesses is like they just make a logo and then they just go all out selling without doing all these steps. So, to get to the branding stage, this all the previous steps become a mandate.
Right, and actually this helps you when you take your product or service from just a product or service to a brand status, right? So this whole process allows you to think about your whole presentation or offering to the world in a brand lens, and which is more a human connect.
Then the eighth and the most important step is, Sari,
Is building high performance teams, right? So once now you know that this is your product and this is how you want to present it into the world and this is the message that you want to go out with, who is going to do this? And for that, you need to create a culture within your organization that is so in tune with the values that you as a founder uphold. And therefore, you hire the right people in order to do this job and take that vision that you have in your mind and do it with as much passion as you have. So it becomes really important, one, to hire the right people, having clarity of what their job description would be and what would be the role that they're going to play in your organization, right? Because you now know the whole process flow has been also mapped out. You know exactly this is the part that I'm automating, this is where I'm going to hire. And if I'm hiring, when I'm hiring you, I can tell you in the first place itself that this is the role that I want you to do. So many times you hire and then that person comes on the job and then for the first few days they're lost because they don't know why what they were told and what they're doing are two different things.
so primarily what you're saying is the job description which is put out there versus the job they are expected to do is so different.
And sometimes, yeah, they don't have a clue because there's nobody to give them direction in terms of what is to be done. But if you have very clear SOPs in place and that person knows that this process needs to be done like this, even if the founder is not there, that job can still be done because the process is so clearly defined and clearly iterated that even if I come onto the job today, within a day or two, I'll be ready to go flying. And maybe you can also ensure that they themselves don't have to rethink the wheel every time, right? The process is so clearly done, and the founder also knows what each cog in the wheel is doing, right? So that the output is exactly how they want it to be, and they're not surprised. And every time somebody leaves and a new person comes, the experience that the customer is having with that product is not changing.
Right, and most of the founders don't hire because they're scared that the person's going to leave.
That's another big thing, right? Because मैंने इतना train किया और फिर वो भाग गए.
So if that, to avoid that, it's important to map roles and have proper descriptions on what that person's doing, and ensuring the handover system is so critically planned for each of the next employees that are coming.
Right. And while you also do the job description and have a role map, it's so important for people to know what are they being rated for. Right, so the entire rating metrics also becomes so important that they know that, okay, if my job is to ensure that order processing, for example, is done properly and that this level of quality control is to be maintained, and then as a founder I just need to review that these were the things that we had agreed upon, saying that this X level of quality was to be maintained, and they're doing that. The review mechanism becomes so easy that there's so much transparency in the dealings between the boss and the subordinate or anybody in the team, because one, everybody knows what they're supposed to do and they're getting judged for the same thing. And when there are appraisals, nobody's taken by surprise ki you did not do what you were supposed to be
because you
doing.
set it at day one. So the key performance indicators, that is a very common parlance in the corporate world, can be really taken down to a startup or a very small business level as
Right,
well.
right. And as a founder, it becomes very important to know how to review your team. Right? पहले तो हमने बोला था कि you have to know how to delegate, and after you delegate, you need to know that the person who's doing the job is doing a good job, and then that person also needs to know that there is someone who is watching out for what you're doing. So closing this whole loop of explaining what are the KPIs and then actually going and reviewing it, and then they ensure that your team is getting compensated well, right? And basic simple things like the bonuses are given on time, your salaries are given on time, and there are good commissions which are planned, so that even the employees realize that they're working towards something that for them is important, and money is important for the teams, right? So they know that if they reach this target, this is the amount of money they can make, right? So performance being linked to paychecks also allows people to be more motivated, along with having a culture that promotes good work.
True, and when you tie all this in, you are bound to have a excellent business which is centered around heart, which is centered around so much joy.
Right, and that's why the Heart to Biz 8-step framework takes you through all these 8 steps, which we don't realize when we're starting a business becomes so important to scale. And doing it in such a short time, especially in a cohort program where we take you through this in 90 days, right? It's such an eye opener, and it's such a game changer, because you are going into something totally prepared and planned, and not something you need to be scared of and be overwhelmed with. And the most important thing is you do this in a community, right? You do it along with other people who are there to have your back, and you learn from what they are doing right, and you have a group of people who come from different industries usually.
And they're very well selected. And unlike other programs that are out there, we strongly believe that having a small cohort and giving each one of them the personal attention and accountability, even through our facilitators, become so important.
Right, and because there's no competition, because we try to not get people from the same industry within one cohort, so you know that this is a safe space, and what you discuss continues to be in that, and there are people who are encouraging each other, and you learn from the mistakes of others, because it is an iterative journey at the end of the day, and the energy of the group is always so exciting, and you end up being lifelong friends, because otherwise entrepreneurship can be really a lonely journey, and when you have 4 or 5 people along with you, it just becomes so much more reassuring and so much more encouraging, and you just feel supported.
Entrepreneurship is a lonely journey, but you don't necessarily have to do this alone. We at ZAC would love to support you. Join our cohort and our podcast. Follow us, like, subscribe, and share this podcast.